You can come on if you want. I didn't really have anything to talk about, so just waiting for people's. I'm writing, actually. Well, I was trying to. Hmm. Well, I guess I have to do something entertaining now then. I mean, I can put on other videos. Mm, let me see. Am I singing? Well, I sang. Oh, that's something I can put on here. I sang for Rigel Thurston's 12 days of streaming. And no, wait, that's not one. I'm trying to find the right. This is a great thing to put on now that I think about it. I just got to present the screen. So Rigel is recruiting people to sing along to the 12 days of streaming. And I will play that now so people can hear it.
One, two, three. On the first day of streaming, the algo gave to me a lurker breaking the fourth wall. On the second day of streaming, the algo gave to me 2 new subscribers and a lurker breaking the fourth wall. On the third day of streaming, the algo gave to me 3 made-up words, 2 new subscribers, and a lurker breaking the fourth wall. On the fourth day of streaming, the algo gave to me 4 PDK mentions, 3 made-up words, 2 new subscribers, and a lurker breaking the fourth wall. On the 5th day of streaming, the algo gave to me 5 onboarding randos, 4 PDK mentions, 3 made-up words, 2 new subscribers, and a lurker breaking the fourth wall. On this 6th day of streaming, the algo gave to me 6 pictures pointing, 5 onboarding randos, 4 PVK mentions, 3 made-up words, 2 new subscribers, and a lurker breaking the fourth wall. On the 7th day of streaming, the algo gave to me 7 lads a cleaning, 6 pictures pointing, 5 onboarding randos, 4 PVK mentions, 3 made-up words, 2 new subscribers, and a lurker breaking the fourth wall. On the 8th day of streaming, the algo gave to me 8 confused spouses spouses, 7 lads a cleaning, 6 pictures pointing, 5 onboarding randos, 4 PBK mentions, 3 made up words, 2 new subscribers, and a lurker breaking the 4th wall. On the 9th day of streaming, the algo gave to me 9 fractals fracting, 8 confused spouses, 7 lads a cleaning, 6 pictures pointing, 5 onboarding randos, 4 PBK mentions, 3 made up words, 2 new subscribers, and a lurker breaking the 4th wall. On the 10th day of streaming, the algo gave to me 10 flotillas floating, 9 fractals fracting, 8 confused spouses, 7 lads a cleaning, 6 pictures pointing, 5 onboarding randos, 4 PBK mentions, 3 made up words, 2 new subscribers, and a lurker breaking the 4th wall. On the 11th day of streaming, the algo gave to me 11 estuaries, 10 flotillas floating, 9 fractals fracting, 8 confused spouses, 7 lads a cleaning, 6 pictures pointing, 5 onboarding randos, 4 PBK mentions, 3 made up words, 2 new subscribers, and a lurker breaking the 4th wall. On the 12th day of streaming, the algo gave to me 12 opponents processing, 11 estuaries, 10 flotillas floating, 9 fractals fracting, 8 confused spouses, 7 lads a cleaning, 6 pictures pointing, 5 onboarding randos, 4 PBK mentions, 3 made up words, 2 new subscribers, and a lurker breaking the 4th wall. And a lurker breaking the 4th wall.
That was getting a little it's not the it's not the greatest of background music, but that's because it's only him and it's supposed to be a whole bunch of people, so that's why everybody else needs to contribute.
Breaking the 4th wall.
Anyway, yeah, so here I'll put the link for people's, and or actually I will just do this. And I'll paste this link here. This is the link to his Substack. So he gives you the instructions for what to do. So just record yourself and then upload the video. And you need to have it done by December 22nd. So that's 2 days. So, 3 days, whatever. How it's Monday. So you got to get this done by Monday. And right now, I know that I did it and Neil did it. And I'll feel weird if it's just a trio. So other people need to do it too. But knowing that you will be at least the fourth person to be participating means that it's already less of a putting yourself out there. I did want to. I thought about trying to get my wife to come in and sing 8 Confused Spouses because she sings much better than I do, but then I would have had to explain the whole thing, and then, I just did it in the car, like before I got to work in the morning. My arms are made of noodles. The fourth wall breaks me. Well, okay. We need to recreate a new estuary protocol thing for noodle arm people. A special place just for them. Well, it can't be an estuary because then their arms might get soggy. So it's got to be a drier version of an estuary. Well, anyway, this is Rigel's blog. He had a good conversation with Christian Baxter, and many topics were very closely related to the topics of my book. So that was pretty interesting to talk about. Hello, Claire.
Hello. Hi, Mike. I hope you're well.
Yes, I'm
just
fine.
closing
How are you?
my. Yes, I'm well. I was wondering what you thought of moralistic therapeutic deism. I know that wasn't what you were discussing, but I'd be quite interested to know what your view was. It was being discussed some time ago.
Yeah. My thought was that it wasn't necessarily such a bad thing. I first heard of it from churches talking about how this is what people are coming to believe or believing instead of believing a more clear and explicit gospel. And so in that regard, I can see why a Christian would say, there's a need to clarify why, what is the actual gospel, and or not in opposition to moral therapeutic deism. But I think that what Sam Tiedemann was pointing towards in his videos about it as kind of a background religion, I think it was something that served a good function. And I think that it probably helped establish a framework, wherein something like religious liberty or separation of church and state was not understood. If it had, my idea was that if it had been a little bit more implicitly or explicitly written into like our founding documents of the United States, it might have prevented the kind of the role that secular materialism, atheistic materialism took on by becoming the neutral, pretending to be a neutral position. Because of course, atheism is not a neutral position, but it kind of became the default. So having some sort of deism or something like that is kind of like an acknowledgement that there is a creator or something. I think that would have probably been a good thing to have be a little more clear.
Yes, but I suppose I don't know if you were aware when Pope Francis was saying everyone has a reasonable chance of going to heaven. Do you remember him saying that, or not really?
I don't think I ever paid attention to anything the Pope ever said, but that sounds like a thing that he would have said. So
yes,
I
and
never paid attention to anything.
you're Catholic. Sorry, there's an echo. Is it?
Yeah, it's Ron.
Yes, it's Ron. Ron, could you mute yourself so we don't hear an echo? Thank you. What was I going to say?
I'm not Catholic.
And I remember you're not.
No.
Oh, right. I suppose it's your Italian name, and I just assumed that you were Catholic. So I remember Catholics being quite angry that he said that, because I assume, that, traditional Catholics were saying, well, what do we do all this for? We attend extra long masses and, we're full of Catholic guilt. And then, we didn't do all that to have the Pope saying everyone has a reasonable chance of getting to heaven. So I kind of saw why Catholics might get, traditional Catholics anyway, might get angry at this, everyone can come in and it doesn't matter what. And I suppose moralistic therapeutic deism seems to be more about lowering the standards of admission to heaven.
Well, I mean, perhaps. I think I would say that all right, so I'll put it this way. In my own kind of reflections and journey, the thing that I'm most opposed to, I would say, is Christians overemphasizing like fear of hell as the necessary mechanism to get people to believe or to behave a certain way. I think that's counterproductive because I don't think that fear is a very sustainable or good motivator.
But we still have the law, so the law makes us fear the punishment we would get if we broke the law. Isn't that the reason for the law?
Well, punishment is not, but that it was not. No, I don't think that fear of punishment is the reason to keep the law. The law, if you believe that God created and God is the creator of the law, then the law is a blueprint for how we as people made in the image of God ought to live. And living,
but most people are atheists now.
Yeah, well,
and the meaning crisis is basically a crisis of atheism, isn't it?
Well, no, I don't think so. I don't think anybody's really an atheist. I mean, I think that people essentially reject a church that has not, or a concept of people who believe in God who haven't lived according to their stated beliefs. And using fear is a big problem contributing to that. Using fear as a tool.
Yes.
But the people who maybe say they are atheists, and I mean, especially, a lot of them maybe have a lot of integrity. That's why they wouldn't put their name associated with God or Christianity or the church or something like that. They're doing so in keeping with the law that orders the universe. They are not bearing false witness against themselves. They're not bearing the name of God in vain. So they are. So what they're doing is right in some sense. So,
what do you mean, atheist?
Yeah, if they
atheists obey the law only because they know they're going to be punished if they don't. What is their motivation other than
no?
fear?
They don't. I mean, this is a thing. Okay, this is a thing that like presuppositional Christian apologists will try to say, but it's not true. You don't think that people do not only psychopaths or sociopaths or whatever follow laws only because for a specific consequence of the outcome, or to avoid a punishment or something like that. Avoiding punishment.
Well, it's rising, isn't it? Psychopaths and sociopaths. They are a problem.
It might be. It might be rising. That's true. But
are there loving communists, atheists? And I'm trying to get a yes out of everybody. So I guess communists, whether in China or Russia, and there's got to be one or two out there, do they love their children?
Yes.
Okay. And I think
yes, of course they think they're decent people. But we're not. I'm not, trying to be judgmental and saying, communists are better or atheists are better. I'm just talking in terms of obedience to the law, because, basically, if you're an atheist, you might think that if the law doesn't punish you, you've gotten away with it. But if you did believe in God and the afterlife, you would think, well, just because I got away with it in this lifetime doesn't mean I'll escape punishment in the afterlife. Isn't that what they're supposed to think, if they really did believe in the whole story? And then, of course, you deal with the problem of hypocrisy, people pretending to believe in God and the afterlife.
No, I think you can explicitly link atheism, the rise of atheism, to a misappropriation and overextension by the church of hell as a fear of eternal punishment was leveraged as a mechanism to manage people's behavior, and essentially. I think, maybe like even Darwin, I think in his motivation, because he was motivated by the suffering and all that, essentially, people said, we're willing to give up the dream of heaven to not have to deal with the headache of hell, as people have weaponized it, really.
Well, but if God exists, then I guess the afterlife exists and also hell exists. So we're kind of, kicking the can down the road into our afterlives, right? If we decide not to obey God's laws, because they're quite clear, aren't they? I mean, believe and, I mean, the whole idea surely was that only Christians get to heaven. And if you're not Christian, well, you won't even have the, chance of getting to heaven. That used to be the belief, and suddenly it all changed, and then everybody can get to heaven, and there's now this Christian universalism thing. But, assuming God exists, when did he say it was okay to, dilute his laws to such to dilute his rules until it doesn't really matter. I never said
you don't need to dilute his rules. Diluting his rules is not the right thing.
But isn't that what has happened through moralistic therapeutic deism, which isn't even a proper religion?
This is most religions dilute the law because of the problem in that no one can keep them perfectly. And when you have a structure of authority that is in charge of interpreting it, whether it's the Catholic Church or the rabbis or the imams and all that, they always will tell you, no, it doesn't. When the law of God sounds extreme, they will tell the people, well, it doesn't mean that. It means something less extreme, as if it's all hyperbole. But that's not what the actual text says of itself. And there is a problem in that nobody can keep the law perfectly, but that problem is not solved by diluting it, nor is it solved by ignoring it. It's the law is there to teach us something about God, the God who created it, in whose image we are made, and the purpose of what we're doing here. So the passage that I go to, which is highly contested and really comes up against a lot of puts up a lot of problems for people who want to dilute the law, is Romans chapter 7. I guess starting in verse 7, where Paul says, "What shall we say then? Is the law sinful? Certainly not. Nevertheless, I would not have known what sin was had it not been for the law." And this makes sense, obviously, because you cannot, until you know what the rule is, you are ignorant. You're not, and this is how parents treat their children. Nobody holds someone to account for not knowing something that they couldn't have known. As he says, "For I would not have known what coveting really was if the law had not said, 'You shall not covet.'" And this is a very interesting thing, why he says covetousness, and why this is the last of the 10 Commandments. Because you could very easily go down the list of the 10 Commandments, and according to the interpretation of whoever's in charge of your community, most people probably have not violated those things. Certainly not in the most significant sense. Haven't worshipped false gods or created gods, bowed down to them, haven't dishonored your parents if you haven't done some grievous crime against them or something. Most people haven't killed. Most people don't steal. Most people don't commit adultery. Most people don't bear false witness, at least certainly not in when somebody's put to the you put a Bible in front of somebody and tell them to swear to tell the truth, they will do so. So and all these things, most people can keep all of those laws. But then when it gets to the last law, and it says you shall not covet, and it says you shall not cover your neighbor's wife or his servant or his house or his ox or whatever, as soon as somebody reads that, they're thinking about their neighbor's wife, house, whatever, ox, servant, or their comparable 21st century counterparts. And I don't think that anyone can honestly say they have not desired any of those things. I mean, in fact, our whole economy is essentially based on the idea of covetousness. It's based on fueling desire for other people's things, and anything that's a zero sum. If you have it, I don't have it.
Then I might hate you for having the thing that I desire.
Yeah. So
and wish to harm you. So it seems that.
So that's well, yes. Well, sure. And isn't that, if God is omniscient,
then he'll know about your thought crimes. But it seems a bit, extreme to say, well, because you thought of something, but you didn't do it. There is a verse in the New Testament, I don't know which book it was, that you have committed adultery before, even if you don't do it. If you just think of it, you've done it. And if your hand should turn you to sin, cut it off. Isn't that a little extremist?
No.
Oh, because we're not supposed to take it literally.
No, it's not. Well, I mean, no. If you really, really come to the conclusion, if you fully understand, I don't think even cutting your hand off would be too extreme. Now, it's not. I mean, part of the good, essentially, in a Christian term, you don't just cut your hand off, you essentially end your life. You are crucified with Christ. So then you're surrendering total control of your life to God. You don't need to just give him one body part. But it's not extreme.
All he wants is obedience. He doesn't really want, an arm and a leg. He just wants you to understand what he means and just obey. He doesn't want you to be, cutting off your bits and pieces and throwing it away.
No, I don't think that he just wants us to obey. I do not think that. I mean,
But there's a book of Deuteronomy that lists the blessings of obedience and the curses for disobedience, isn't there?
Yes,
Chapter
that doesn't mean he
28.
only wants obedience, because obedience is the benefit, and the use of obedience is bound in a relationship between the person obeying and the person being obeyed.
The covenant, isn't that's the idea, isn't it? The covenant.
Yeah. But I mean, you can just think of it as any relationship, like if I'm using the printer for my computer, I just want the printer to obey. If it doesn't print the thing I ask it to print, then its use to me is over. Like, I'm not going to keep a printer that refuses to work, because that's the relationship of it, is that it's a thing created to be used for a specific purpose, a utility. And when it can't do that, then, well, I guess the printer deserves to be thrown in hell, because it
be scrapped or sold or abandoned.
But that's not the same relationship with, or intent or purpose with which God created man in his image. He created
but he is sort of saying that, isn't he? I mean, you might have an employee who doesn't do what he's supposed to do. You might dismiss him.
You might, but you might not, because there is a value in redeeming the mistakes and the disobedience of somebody, depending on their response to their own mistakes. So like, that might be in an employment environment. It's very, very rare that you would have somebody, especially because of the high cost of vetting people and training them. It would have to be a very monumental mistake to get somebody fired, like on the first thing, most of the time. But if it's an honest mistake, or if it's a reasonable mistake, or even if it is a very costly mistake,
or if they express the wrong view.
Well, that's not a good reason. That's not a good reason for firing people. I'm just using this in analogy. I'm not trying to explain all of the bad hiring practices of DEI and all that stuff. But I'm telling you that in a competent business environment, if somebody is given trust, this would be like the parable of the talents, where Jesus talks about the servants each given a different amount of money to invest. The master's already written off the costs of that by giving it to them as an investment. He's not necessarily expecting a return. Now, the two wise servants, they make a return. They double their investment. And then the one who's afraid of his master hides it. He hides it and he just gives it back. And the master is very upset. Now, I would suggest that he would be less upset if that servant had lost all the money in an investment. Because if he had lost all the money in a failed investment, the master would have said, we can learn something from that bad investment you made. We know what not to do next time. And so the next time I give you an opportunity, I want you to try something different. But by hiding the money, he showed that he didn't even understand what his relationship with the master was. He didn't understand the nature of the relationship. He thought that it was based in punishment, and he was afraid of him. It said he was afraid of him. And essentially, when living in that belief, the master then said, fine, if that's how you want to view our relationship, then I'll give you what you want, what you expected. I'll be the harsh master. But that is not reflective of the normal or intended relationship between God and people.
Can I throw in something in this? Yeah. First off, hi, Claire.
Hi, Ron.
It is really, I don't know if you call it the frame of love, but basically the New Testament for me is completely framed in his love, by his spirit of love. so that you might, because I missed part of the conversation. But basically, you can mess up, and if you mess up a lot, even willfully, but there is a change of heart, repentance, which is actually given by God, then you are in training to become perfect. And what I mean by that is we become what we behold. And as we behold God within our hearts and mind, we become perfect as He is. I think you said, be perfect as I am perfect. And so love fulfills all of the law. And His Spirit, so it also enables us to fulfill it. I don't know if that adds anything to the conversation.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think it does. I mean, I was, going through this part in Romans 7 because I think that it makes very clear what God's purpose is with the law and what it does, and really who is affected by it. But yes, the love covers over all of it. I mean, I think that's the thing, essentially, that with the gospel is, as opposed to a moralistic therapeutic deism, is about restoring a proper understanding of the relationship that you have with God, that you are a child of God, and that it's not like it's when you think of the relationship between God and man, it's father and son or father and child. It's not just God as unknowable, unreachable perfection and human as like the lower created thing.
How about master and slave? Because I think there is some sort of debate about whether we are the slaves of God.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Paul refers to himself in that way all the time. But if in that sense, then God is the master that a slave will willingly become, that a slave will willingly sign up to serve. He's not using a mechanism of fear or power to enforce his will. So,
but it says the beginning of wisdom is fear of the Lord. So
yeah,
we're meant to fear Him, aren't we?
That's the beginning. I mean, this is the most primary metaphors to describe the relationship of God and man in the Bible are that of a parent and a child and a husband and a wife. And in both those cases, fear maybe, between husbands and wives, not so much, but with children, there is a fear that children have of their parents to a certain degree. And some of that is natural, but it's it's the parents' responsibility to shape what they do with that fear and how they direct it. And, if they beat their kids, well, their kids are going to keep being afraid of them. But is that going to help their children grow in some way? Probably not. It's not going to foster the most healthiest of relationship. So just because wisdom, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of the wisdom, it does not mean that that's its end place.
Can I throw something out on the fear of the Lord? I think that gets misinterpreted really bad. I think, and this is just, I guess, my experience. When I first met God, He was horrifying, but not in a slasher way. It was more like, hi, I control every atom in the universe. I'm God. You're not. Are we clear? And he didn't have to ask me the question. It was a moment of revelation where I'm like, oh, I get it now. I'm not you. And that's just the way it is. And in there, it was to lack of a better word, fearful moment, but it was not oppressive. The fear of the Lord is, I think, clean. So there's actually a component of love in it. It's not either or. So but because most people, most people don't experience it. I can't share my experience. And so the conversation is kind of limited, but, it's still worth having to express it.
Yes. And I would say that more properly understood, the fear becomes not fear of punishment, but more so fear of disappointment, and that, or fear of disappointing, and that almost, the overwhelming aspect of that is the more that you come to know God, to realize how highly He actually does think of you, or like to say, like His faith in you is actually so great, like that He actually thinks you could become capable of living up to all these expectations.
His faith in us is greater than our faith in ourselves.
Yeah.
So,
So okay, so I'm gonna just go back to the verses. So Paul talks about how sin, seizing the opportunity afforded by the commandment, produced in me every kind of coveting. For apart from the law, sin is dead. If there are no rules to break, there is no wrong that you can do. But that doesn't. So if God wanted, so in one sense, that could be one way of having a universal salvation, if there's a world with no law. But and if God was really desiring only that everyone would be saved, then that I suppose we would have to expect that would be the world in which He would create us. But that's not the world in which He created us. And then the law then is not for the purpose of saving people. That's not what it does. It's for something else. It's to teach us something about, and it means that there's something beyond just making it to the afterlife that God values in our learning to wrestle with this. Verse 9, once I was alive apart from the law, but when the commandment came, sin sprang to life and I died. So even there, it's like right when he was reading, being the good Jewish boy that's been taught the commandments, and he's reading commandments 1 through 9, he's like, yes, I'm doing it. I'm a good boy. I've done all the things. And then he reads that one about coveting his neighbor and all of his neighbor's stuff. And then he's hit with a realization, oof, I cannot say that I've committed that. And if I didn't, and if I lie about having broken that commandment, well, then I've broken the commandment against bearing false witness. I'm bearing false witness against myself. And if I lie about what I did covet, that would be the one. Or to, and even in the breaking of the other ones, stealing, murder, adultery, you cannot break those commandments without first coveting the object of your desire. Because if it was yours, you can't steal it. You can't steal your own house. You can't, well, I guess you could murder yourself maybe. But, you can't commit adultery with your own wife. So you have to, this is the thing that he's realizing. And this is what people don't want to probe the depth of. And as far as, and that's even why when Jesus says, if you lust, you have already committed adultery in your heart. So fear of consequence may keep people from doing something in the physical world that will have ramifications, and that's good. It's good that we do have punishments for those things. But from the God's eye view of an omniscient being, the pain of our sins is no less, whether we commit them in our physical reality or simply in our imagination. And I mean, I think you can understand this more now than ever because of what people can do with artificial intelligence. Because if somebody was to create a video depicting something horrendous done to one of my loved ones or anybody's loved one, the person, even though the person has not been physically harmed, they've done something just as evil and offensive to the parent or husband or wife or son or daughter of that person by creating that thing. So there is real damage that comes through thought crimes, and like artificial intelligence maybe is putting one step out. It lets people, but you can't create, you put the prompt in, you have the thought. So you've already committed the thought crime when somebody tries to do it. Now we have an intermediary step between the thought and the full-blown thing, which I think illustrates the actual problem with the thought crime. So, so when the commandment came, sin sprang to life, and I died. So he realized that he realized that his relationship with God was not based in his obedience because he had not been able to obey. I found that the very command that was intended to bring life actually brought death. For sin, seizing the opportunity afforded by the commandment, deceived me, and through the commandment put me to death. So then, the law is holy, and the commandment is holy, righteous, and good. That is an untenable situation there, what he's talking about. We are incapable of breaking these things, so we all essentially stand accused and guilty of breaking the law. So diluting it doesn't really solve that problem, but that's nonetheless. Did that which is good then become death to me? By no means. Nevertheless, in order that sin might be recognized as sin, it used what is good to bring about my death, so that through the commandment, sin might become utterly sinful. So in this sense, the coveting as being not, maybe we could say, it's not as physically detrimental as actually committing murder or adultery or theft or bearing false witness, but by recognizing the same evil inclination through breaking that, what we may say is a lesser, but in other ways is also a greater commandment of coveting, then he realizes that sin is sin. He realizes what sin is and why it is not good, why we shouldn't do it. And it's not just because of the fear of punishment, because I don't think most people want to live in a world where they know that all of their neighbors are coveting their wife and coveting their house and coveting their job and whatever else they possess. Most people don't want to live in a society where they know that it's only a fear of punishment that is keeping people from just acting on every base impulse. And when one person who acts like that, comes, or when comes through, that's why you get like serial killers and stuff like that. But most people don't live that way. Most people end up recognizing that if they don't want their neighbors thinking that way of them, that there's something wrong with them doing it themselves. So people learn this even without necessarily being taught it explicitly, by making mistakes and realizing that these things have a negative impact on our own lives. The law is proven right in some sense. And that's where he gets in here. We know that the law is spiritual, but I am unspiritual, sold as a slave to sin. I do not understand what I do. For what I want to do, I do not do, but what I hate, I do. And here, it's very clear what he's talking about. The thing that he hates that he does is committing sin. And what he wants to do is to live righteously according to the law. So he's saying living according to the law is good in and of itself if it was So the law condemns him because it's showing that the way that he was living was not right, it was an inferior way of living, but he's still not capable of living the way that he now recognizes by hearing the law is a better way to live. And if I do what I do not want to do, I agree that the law is good. So every time that somebody does something wrong and they agree that it was bad, or they recognize that it's not what they really want to do, then they are supporting the good of the law. So people behaving badly is the thing that upholds the law, not people obeying it. As it is no longer I, myself, who do it, but it is sin living in me. So here he's saying that within himself there is two distinct forces. There is a self that, maybe what we might call the authentic self that wants to serve God. That would be the self created in the image of God, but the presence of a sinful nature as well is the one that's in control. That is what is making the choices. For I know that the good itself does not dwell in me, that is, in my sinful nature. For I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. So good itself, I guess you would say, the perfect good, the goodness of God, doesn't dwell within him, doesn't dwell within his sinful nature. But because he has the desire to do what is good, but he can't carry it out. He doesn't have the power, essentially, to do what the law commands him to. For I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do, this I keep on doing. So it's a cycle of addiction. This is everybody that's addicted. This is what they are in. They keep doing the thing that they don't want to do. And all sin is addictive, even if not all addictions are sin. Now, if I do what I do not want to do, it is no longer I who do it, but it is sin living in me that does it. So this is recognizing a distinction within us, that the aspect of us created in the image of God does not sin, does not want to break the law, but it is overpowered by some aspect of the will, the free agency that God gives us. And we are powerless to it because we've already surrendered in some sense to that. So I find this law at work. Although I want to do good, evil is right there with me. For in my inner being, I delight in God's law. But I see another law at work in me, waging war against the law of my mind and making a prisoner of the law of sin at work within me. So this is internal conflict everybody has to some extent. It's not just fear of punishment. There is internal conflict that drives people. So it's not just a fear of consequence or punishment that motivates people to live correctly. What a wretched man I am. Who will rescue me from this body that is subject to death? Thanks be to God who delivers me through Jesus Christ our Lord. So then, I myself in my mind am a slave to God's law, but in my sinful nature a slave to the law of sin. So, I think it shows pretty well why it shows the folly of simply just saying try harder to obey, or increasing the fear of consequences for disobedience, because people really aren't capable of living that way. And that's why they always end up watering down the law, or they create some sort of loophole for themselves, or they create a class distinction between different groups of people so that they can treat one group so that their sins against one group are no longer counted as sins, and they can show preference to those who it's easier to be loving towards. But all of that is there's not a real solution through just effort or increasing laws or changing laws or finding the perfect law that will solve any of those problems of human nature. Cool. I won the argument. If it was such. Well, what's left to say? I guess the thing is, Joab's here. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Oh, pretty good.
Going back to the beginning on hell, on the subject of hell. I have sent my son to make a survey of all major cathedrals and churches in the Iberian Peninsula. And he came back reporting that you can hardly ever see any depiction of hell. See lots of heaven and lot of saints. And his conclusion is that in the Middle Ages, the fear of hell was not as strong as advertised there.
Yeah. Well, they had I think they kind of had their big distinction was between purgatory and heaven, and how, hell maybe not so much, but how purgatory might be 10,000 years or millions of years or whatever before you get to heaven. So
yes, but you don't see picture of purgatory as well in the cathedrals. I said that going to church was a family-friendly event. You go with your kids every Sunday and holiday. You don't want them to have to be facing picture of hell. It's not not the way to live.
Well, I think that this is a thing I've often thought when it comes to like all that studying the Middle Ages and stuff, is like we have all these books written by these guys who lived in monasteries and big cities and stuff like that, and we don't have any books written by the people who couldn't read or write. But I think their main question was, what are we going to eat? That was their main concern.
No, you can judge them by their art. While we're waiting, while I'm personally quite certain that Abraham didn't think that God has a wife, I don't remember him referring to the subject ever. And I know that ancient Israelis have believed that they believed that the Abrahamic God had a wife. Question is, how do you fund an Abrahamic religion?
All right, I got about 10 more minutes or so.
Good. Yeah. So what I said, that you can judge the people by their art, because a lot of the art in the cathedrals were made and donated by the common people. If they were obsessed with the notion of hell, you would see more statues of demons than saints.
I think it might be, maybe it was Dante was the big shift there.
Could be.
So far I haven't met somebody who I thought would be. I mean, I've heard a lot of people recommend it, but I haven't found the person that's made it seem meaningful or interesting to me yet. So, not that it could it can't happen, but you know, I usually want to read things that I feel like, oh, if I get to read this, then I'll have a conversation with somebody that I might actually enjoy, not somebody that I'm going to argue with all the time or whatever. So. Yep.
Okay, this is about what I wanted to say.
Okay.
There's a raging argument about Mormonism in the chat. Don't think you want to dwell on that.
Ooh, maybe I should. I like Mormons.
Okay. Do you consider them an Abrahamic religion?
Yeah, I mean, I think their religion wouldn't stand without the Bible that all the other Abrahamic religions rely on. So, I think I think it's a unique thing. I think, they present a really interesting challenge, especially I think for like people like myself in the kind of common evangelical churches that are typical in America, because there's probably no group of people on an individual level that we are more similar and have more in common, but they really want to argue about the distinctions. And it's like, so, that's like, it's a, there's some people, more comfortability of like, can evangelical Protestants and Catholics work together? Yes, we can work together on some things. We're never going to see everything 100% eye to eye, but we can get along. But in reality, it's like, if you're going to say who are you going to share an actual like culture and normal like lifestyle with, it's much closer with the Mormons. But I think that at this point, like however it was founded, at this point, it's only gone so long because most of the people that following it have lived according to many Abrahamic principles. It wouldn't have survived if they were all liars and thieves and cheaters and all that. So it's kind of got some strange elements in their theology, but the way that they live is very much in accordance to, I guess you could say, in accordance to the law. So,
yeah, but I'm struggling with the definition. Living in accordance with the law is making you more a follower of Moses than of Abraham. I would say, just for the sake of the argument raging in the comments, that at minimum, being an Abrahamic religion is believing that Abraham existed.
Okay, well, I think they would agree with that.
In that sense, Mormonism is an Abrahamic religion by that definition, and I'm ready to listen to any other.
I mean, the debate is whether Mormons are Christians or whether Mormonism can be considered Christianity, and that all depends on the definition. So, and that's why I would say that many Mormons live more like Christians than many Christians with supposedly more orthodox theology. So, and that's just a tired argument. I think that that's the one that LLMs are starting to kind of prove the folly of. That language is, I guess, really entirely symbolic. You could assign any word or sound to any meaning, but the only way that you know what the meaning of the words is through the experience that you have growing up, observing, listening, and talking to other people. And so then, if you have two groups of people, they may use very different words or phrases to describe extremely similar things. And so then you have an argument. It's not really accomplishing anything because you're just talking past each other the whole time. So I don't know, maybe it's 50 or 100 years or something, and then Mormons will just be seen as just another type of Christian by most of the other Christians. I don't know.
Yeah, you were referring to the question to what extent is language arbitrary, or does language always fall into certain molds that are predetermined? To that, I can make a contribution as a color expert. We have lots of languages that have lots of names for different colors. And there are major differences between how they divide the color wheel, because the color wheel is continuous.
Mm-hmm.
You can draw the borders between color names arbitrarily and decide about any arbitrary number of colors in the color wheel. But it turns out that all of humanity falls in certain particular predetermined patterns in how they divide the color wheel, which means that language is not arbitrary and people are not tabula rasa.
Yeah, well, I mean, no, they're certainly not tabula rasa, and it's not arbitrary. Like, I mean, especially in regard to like colors and things like that, you know, there's a certain frequency of visible light and then there's things outside of that. And then, you know, we have a certain number of rods and cones that can perceive that in a certain degree of specificity, and it doesn't go beyond that. So, the patterns that emerge of intelligibility are going to have a certain amount of overlap no matter what. But what those specific words or names are can vary. So
okay, the battle in the comments is turning quite nasty. I think it will be safest for the TLC to end this broadcast as soon as possible.
Okay. All right. Well, then we will say goodbye.
Yeah. Happy
Later.
holidays.